Hey guys, welcome back. It's time to talk about all the books that I read in May. I read a total of 14 books this month. I'm still right on track to read 200 books this year. I am at this point about 4 books ahead of schedule. We're going to go ahead and start with the series that I added to because it is kind of hard to talk about books in the middle of different series, so I won't have a whole lot to say about them. The first one is Spy Family Volume 4. Unfortunately, I could not find Spy Family Volume 3, so we just skipped it and I grabbed the 4th one when I saw it at my library. I feel like with these manga series, it's not like a huge deal if you miss one in the middle because of the way like they're written. This one was really good. Next one is the Assassin's Blade novellas from the Throne of Glass series. This is the prequel to Throne of Glass. Last month I read the first 2, which I struggled to kind of get into. But these last 3 were actually incredibly good. Assassin in the Desert is probably my favorite because we go to a different part of the world. We meet a whole bunch of new characters. We go on this really interesting adventure and she's put through all these different trials. Just going from a different climate to sand dunes and the desert poses its own struggles for her that she has to learn to navigate, and I thought that was just really interesting. Also, the end where it's very cleverly done, and I really enjoyed all of that. The Assassin in the Underworld and the Assassin in the Empire, not as good, but they definitely, of course, had their moments. Yeah. I'm happy that I've finished this because after that, I got into Heir of Fire. So we have 3 different perspectives. We are following Selena while she is in this other part of the world. And that's all very, very interesting. And then we have Kale. We already know Kale, but we're following him and he is leading around another character named Aiden. We learn a lot about his character. I would say those chapters are kind of the least interesting because it's a lot of just like going around, talking to people, puzzling out what their role is and like investigating. And I don't know, I did not find it incredibly interesting. However, I did start to kind of latch on to Aiden's character. We learned something very, very fascinating about Aiden. And then we have the third perspective is from a witch named Manon. There's all these different types of Iron Teeth witches. They're from different clans, and somebody has decided that they are going to be forced to work together, and then they are going to have these trials or something, and they're learning how to fly on wyverns. At first it was just kind of weird, but then like I really, really got into it. I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with Manon. And I don't know if I'm saying that right. Manon. Manon. Especially at the very last scene that you have with Manon. I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with her character and the witches from then on. Heir of Fire was excellent. The ending just had me squealing. I have a group of friends, like in real life friends, and we have like this texting book group that just kind of happened at a birthday party. We started getting it together and it was really cute. But as I was finishing this book, I was like, oh my God. It was really fun to like share that excitement in the moment when I was reading that. So there's that. Oh, I do have kind of like a Throne of Glass reading diaries video that I've been working on. So it's not like my Shadowhunters books where we dig in deep and I have like, one long video per book. It's more just kind of like snippets. Okay, now I'm working on this book and I'm really liking this, or I'm going to put all of them in the same video until I get to the tandem reading. And then I think I'm going to share the tandem reading experience in one vlog by itself. So that's kind of the idea there. Okay. The next one I read is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I've now read 2 books by her. This one is definitely so much better. What was the other one? Juniper and Thorn. I've tried to read Juniper and Thorn like 3 times. Finally, the 3rd time I was able to really get into it, and I don't think I like it. There's something really weird about the whole romance thing. And something about the language that she uses, it did not work for me at all. And it was so sad because I know that one's really, really beloved. But A Study in Drowning did work for me. And I actually, despite having this book, I actually listened to it on audiobook. And I definitely want to go back and read it through physical book because A Study in Drowning follows an amateur aspiring architect who's been obsessing over this book about this fairy king. One day, an offer to restore the author's home comes up, so naturally she jumps at the opportunity. This job, however, becomes more than she bargained for. Also, a grumpy literature scholar is shadowing her, trying to get information about the author's credibility, wanting to dig up information to prove his theory that he is a fraud, which Effie, of course, is not happy about because she's been this massive fan. And the author's house is so deteriorated and the author is really reluctant to take any of her advice, and it's just a complete and utter mess. So she's doing her best to try to make everybody happy in this situation. I really liked this book, and I have to admit that I want to give this a reread. While I read this book on audiobook, I do think that it might be better received through physical book. I really loved how this house was described and the dynamic of the rivals. As you know, I love a book that has a house as a center point. And this house is different than a lot of the other houses because it is literally drowning, sinking into the sea. They have to wade through water in certain sections of the house. I really like the characters and they have an interesting predicament. I feel like a lot of fantasy characters tend to all kind of have the same jobs. You know, you waitress, hunter, assassin, court lady, a noble lady, waiting to go find a husband. Of course, I still really like all of those, but it just was so refreshing to have something so out of the ordinary like an architect. The next book was Entwined by Heather Dixon. I read this book because of a YouTuber who I really admire and I really like all the books that she brings to booktube, and she said this was one of her favorite books. So I read it, and I have to say I was really disappointed that this book didn't work for me as much as it obviously worked for her. Anyways, this book is another 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, and I say another because I've read one other one. I don't know how many there are. I didn't even know about the whole 12 Dancing Princesses fairy tale or whatever until I read House of Salt and Sorrows. Also, I just have to point out that I have never actually read the original of the 12 Dancing Princesses. But the idea is that there are 12 sisters and their mother dies and they are in mourning. There's a lot of rules for them to abide by in time of mourning. For instance, there's no dancing, no singing. They wear only black, no parties. And for these young ladies, it is their prime time to come out into society, showing the eligible males what's on the market. I know that's a very crude way of saying coming out, but it is kind of like that, isn't it? So these sisters grow up with dancing in their home. It's their favorite thing to do. All they want to do is dance. They wind up finding a different land where they can go, and there's parties and dancing all night long, and they get to meet some really interesting, handsome individuals. This really wasn't as I expected. I didn't really care for the characterization of all of the younger sisters. I somewhat liked the eldest daughter well enough, I would say. There's a couple of the other sisters that are talked about a lot, like Bramble, I want to say. They're kind of sweet and cute. Things that I found irritating really overshadowed any of the positives in the story. I do feel like I'm being a little bit harsh. The longer I sit with this book, the longer I feel that irritation is smaller and smaller. And I can just appreciate this book for what it was. It's a very hyper feminine fairy tale retelling. I think the thing that really just ticked me off was how cavalier the girls were when their mother died. Of course, they had their time when they were very upset and crying, but that part was so small. And they're like, but I love dancing. And it was just like, how many times can you say dancing, 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 dancing? And it makes them such shallow characters. I feel like it puts the characters in a very ditzy, frivolous sort of character instead of characters I could actually like. that are, more complex. I think it was just the use of the word dancing was just so repetitive, and it just grated on my nerves, and it was especially present in one in particular instance. It was just always dancing no matter what else was going on. However, at the last probably quarter of the book, I'd say I felt that it really picked up and it went to a much darker and sinister place than I had expected from where it had began. And I did like that. Because it is a retelling and other authors have done their own interpretation of the story, I have to have a moment of who did it best. By far, I have to go with House of Salt and Sorrows. In particular, the mourning period and all of the rules. The fact that they have been in mourning for so long, in House of Salt and Sorrows, their mourning period had been so long. They explained that after their mother had died, every year another sister would also die. And I don't remember them ever going into that in this book. They must have, and I just missed that detail. I don't remember it. The fact that they had been in mourning for so long, their father was withdrawn, and the urgency and importance of going into society was all executed so much better. In this book, Entwined, there was a much bigger emphasis on the technicals of dancing, which I'm really not into dancing. I'm terrible, I'm uncoordinated, and I'm not saying that I have to be good at something to appreciate it. I admire dancing. I admire people who are really good at dancing, sure. But I really don't need a how-to guide, and a lot of that kind of felt like this. It was like so technical that it really lost my interest. As I mentioned earlier, when it came to their mother's death, they almost seemed a lot more selfish because it was like, oh yeah, she died. She gave all this stuff to us, and she always supported us, me. And maybe that's where it started to come in, where I was just like, dude, your mom died. All you can think about is dancing and learning this technical dance. And House of Salt and Sorrows is so incredibly atmospheric. You feel the weight and the dismal state of this dreary house, quiet blackness and depressed environment. So you feel, even if they don't feel that heaviness of grief. And in this, their attitude about just wanting to dance all the time kind of snuffs out the grief. And so it makes it seem like it doesn't matter to them. You know what I mean? All right. So my oldest son is actually at a 3-day summer camp. So he's away for 3 days. That's the only reason I got to get some quiet time to film, because otherwise he's literally in the next room talking loudly with his friends while they're gaming. And now my youngest son is home. He's usually fairly quiet in his room, but he does get quite loud when he starts talking to one of his friends. Like, they start yelling. So you could probably hear him yelling upstairs. I really tried to be like, hey, just like bring it down a notch, but like there is no notch. It's just like all or nothing. So anyways, I apologize. The next book I read is Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. And this is actually the second Rachel Harrison book that I have read. I've seen this book around and I was very interested and captured by the cover art at first. There's kind of a story about the whole like black sheep syndrome that my sister and I that also kind of was interesting and to me and brought me closer to this book. I also found this book on a list. It's a niche genre called bubblegum horror. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently it's like hyper feminine vibes, colors, feminine issues in a horror setting. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't realize it, but I've already read a couple of books that would be classified as this like bubblegum horror, or what's it called? Bubblegum horror or pop horror? I don't know. I think it's a really fun kind of niche genre or subgenre. And so I'm kind of having a lot of fun experimenting with that. So the other Rachel Harrison book I recently read was Such Sharp Teeth. I read that last month. I did really like that one. And I really liked this one. This one follows a woman who is the spitting image of her famous mom who starred in horror movies. But our main character is extremely estranged from her mom, from her whole family, and she denies the relation whenever anyone spots her and is like, you know who you look like? And she's like, no, I have no idea who you're talking about. She had moved from her small town and her family in order to escape a cult. that she was born into. One day she sent an anonymous invitation to her best friend's wedding, which draws her back home. Oddly enough, her best friend is also marrying her ex, and so we get a lot of interesting story and drama with all of that. Plus, this was a really good time. I personally even when I'm not like reading about stuff, other things that are interesting to me are learning about cults. So I really loved this. I felt that it really ties into things that I'm already really interested about. And I really love where they took this book. Of course, it's a mystery and I can't spoil it. It also has, horror and fantasy elements. One thing that really kept me interested throughout the entire book is just wondering who's right about what's real and what's not real. But truly, you need to go read this and find out why, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about. But I really liked that element. That is also something that I really liked about the last Flower Bride. There was a part of wondering, is it real? Is it not real? Next one is a graphic novel called Junior High by Tegan and Sarah. I totally snatched this up at my library because I recognized Tegan and Sarah's names. My little sister was really into their music and introduced me to them. I got the t-shirt and everything, and I really like them. It's been ages since I've even listened to their music. This is called a graphic memoir series, and I think for the most part it is very on point as far as a memoir. But on the front of it says memoir. On the back of it said something about how they're fictionalized versions of themselves, so whatever that means. And Tegan and Sarah are actually twins, and so this story follows them as they start junior high, and they actually end up moving, so they have to make new friends. It's about going and starting a new school. It's just really cute and sweet, and if you like sibling bond stories, I also found this was incredibly interesting in regards to the kinds of questions and misconceptions about what it is to be a twin. They get these questions and then they're like, God, I hate when people ask that. I feel like it's a really interesting perspective. I think that's a really cool addition because you learn something about if you meet a set of twins, maybe you should think twice before you ask these questions because they probably get really sick and tired of answering these questions, how dumb they are. This is a series, but I don't think that I'm going to continue on with the series. It's a middle grade book. Like I said, I really was just like, hey, it's Tegan and Sarah. And so I took a picture of it and I sent it in the group chat I have with my siblings to show my sister that it existed. She probably didn't even know it existed and she thought that was cool. So just one of those things. But the story also goes into how they got their first guitar and started just voraciously wanting to create music, and they would argue over whose turn it was to play on the guitar and practice and, kind of starting a band. So that was just so cool. I really liked it. The next book I read was The Lux by Anna Godberson. This is the first in a series. I am surprised I even got to this. It was just completely by chance. I actually think I saw, what was it? It's completely by chance. I ended up checking out the audiobook, started it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually incredibly good. And I couldn't stop listening to it. I don't know if it's Regency. It feels Regency, but maybe it's not the same era as Regency. I'm not sure. They wear a lot of ball gowns. They go to parties. There's a lot of drama, and it's all about who you're going to get married to. But there's a lot of sneaky betrayal, mean girls, and all that kind of thing. So it kind of reminds me of Bridgerton. The drama reminds me of Bridgerton, but then also it also kind of reminds me of Gossip Girl. I guess I'll just go ahead and quickly read what's on the back. Elizabeth and Diana Holland rule Manhattan's social scene. They're sisters, by the way. But when the girls discover that their family status is far from secure, suddenly everyone is a threat to their golden future. Set in a world of luxury and deception, this thrilling trip to the age of innocence is anything but innocent. Mystery, romance, jealousy, betrayal, humor, gorgeous, historically accurate details. I couldn't put The Lux down. Okay, I don't think this summary really does it a whole lot of justice. So you, of course, are following Elizabeth and Diana. Elizabeth is the eldest sister, so it's her duty to be married first before her sister. She is in love with someone below her station. And then we also follow another man named Henry. He's from a very wealthy family. He is in love with a very promiscuous woman of that time. I don't know. I think she's still like almost equal, but maybe she has like a reputation and maybe she's just, I don't think she's maybe as well off or something. There's something about her. I don't know why. Her dad basically was like, look, I'm going into politics. You need to marry someone to straighten your ass out because you just been flitting around, drinking too much, being a party boy, and I need you to get serious. So I want you to go marry Elizabeth. Make it happen. So he is like, oh, no. I don't want to do this. This girl that he's been with is in love with him. So she thinks that he's going to propose to her. So obviously they're close enough in society that she thinks that that's a very true possibility that they could get married. Okay, maybe I'm giving away too much with all of that, but yeah, it's a lot of like a game of chess. Yeah, anyways, I ate this up. I thought it was really good. I went ahead and checked out the second book, so I'll be reading that this next month in June. The next book I read was Splintered by A.G. Howard. This one was a disappointment. I did finish it. This is an Alice in Wonderland retelling, and it follows the great or great-great-granddaughter of the person who wrote Alice in Wonderland or something like that. And then it also follows, her mom is also like institutionalized because she's kind of wacky. And then she is also starting to have moments of where she like is seeing delusions and things like that. And she's starting to think, oh my God, I might be like my mom, kind of wacky. And up until this, she doesn't really believe that any of this is true. Well, something happens. And so, which takes her into Wonderland, and she needs to break this curse. And a lot of it hinges on the, I don't know if you call it unreliable character. A lot of it hinges on like mental health, I guess. Like, is she crazy? Is she not crazy? Is she crazy? Is this real? A lot of the nonsense and stuff that happened in Wonderland, I thought was just kind of, I was just so unimpressed. I just really was. Then there's this whole kind of romance thing with her friend Jeb. That was really kind of annoying, but I guess in a way it's kind of expected for a book of its time. They did a lot of that, like you're in the heat of the moment and then you're on this mission and there's all this stuff going on. Oh yeah, but let's not forget that like there's all this personal relationship stuff going on, and it's like, oh, come on. I think the other thing that really threw me over the edge of just like, I hate this book, this was such a waste of my time, I'm going to get rid of the series, is the relationship with the caterpillar. It just got weird at that point to me. I just thought it was really weird. There was a part where we went from the like Disney's Alice in Wonderland-esque feel to where it got kind of dark and creepy and disturbing. And I think I kind of liked that better, but I was just already just so over this book that I just didn't like it. I actually had recently gotten the second book, Unhinged, and so I was excited to go ahead and start this. And I didn't even bother trying to see if I might like Unhinged or if the series got better because I just didn't like it. I don't have the book with me because I unhauled it and took it to get traded at my local bookstore. We got 3 more to go. The next one is Siracusa by Delia Ephron. This is basically follows 2 couples and marriage, talks about marriage and their drama and just kind of like their dissatisfaction with each other. I'll be honest, I did not connect to this book as much as I thought I would. I do really like domestic issues, and I thought with like betrayal and all that kind of thing that I would really like it, but I just feel like maybe the execution was too slow for my taste. Something did not capture me. I could not get attached to any of our characters at all, especially one of the husbands. I was just like, you are despicable. I hate you from the get-go. And so I couldn't even enjoy that like he's a bad character and he's meant to be bad and like you're supposed to like that about him. There's nothing about his character that I liked at all. And so it was really rather boring, but I finished it. It's been on my shelf for quite a while. So, I'm glad that I can now get rid of it. The next one is Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. This was quite a surprise. I was a little bit hesitant because I thought this book, because of, I don't know, I just thought maybe it would fall into one of those traps that a lot of young adult fantasy fall into. And in a way it did, but also it was just so much fun and it was really readable. I really liked the characters. I thought the concepts were so interesting. This follows a girl who is the youngest daughter of this famous seamstress. I mean, he's like renowned. There's this war. Two of her oldest brothers go off to war. One of them comes back, but he is severely injured, and they're about to lose everything. And their father is really struggling physically. He's getting older to kind of like hold things together. And an opportunity arises where the emperor is going to be looking for a new tailor. He is getting married, and he's brought his new bride, who is actually the enemy, to their kingdom, and he wants to make her happy. So the perfect wedding dress, a tailor to just kind of like make things easier for her. So this is a dream of hers to come true, that she could be the emperor's tailor. However, as a woman, she never had the opportunity anyways, because you can't be a tailor as a woman. However, she is the best in the store that her father runs. So in order to save her family, she poses. We have a Mulan moment. She cuts off her hair. She poses as her brother and takes off to the palace. And what she finds is there's actually I think they said 25 others there. Then they're all competing for the honor of becoming the emperor's tailor. So the new bride is actually leading this competition with these insane challenges for each outfit that she needs for different events. And so each round she picks a winner. So basically it's Mulan meets Project Runway, and it was so much fun. And there's also a pretty interesting magic system. And there's also another character who's an enchanter who has a very interesting story, and he's quite swoon-worthy. So that was really fun. One more, Strange Folk by Ali Dyer. I received this book from NetGalley as an ARC. It will be published, I want to say August 6th, or is it June 6th? I think it's August. It'll be published in August. I actually have another video where I'm going to do a solo review just of this book to kind of promote it. This book is an Appalachian folk horror mystery book, which is really cool because I needed an Appalachian story for my reading challenge, and this was really good. It's this epic family saga. It follows 3 generations of women of this one family. It follows this woman who flees from her tiny little home all the way to California. She gets married, has a kid. Things don't work out with her ex-husband, so she goes back home for that support with her 2 kids in tow. Then we are forced into all the family drama. So we go through how her family unit is all estranged, what happened with her mother, what's up with her grandma. There's folk magic involved. And unfortunately, there's also a lot of addiction. There is some moonshine alcohol that has got everyone just really addicted to that. And then the mother is also addicted to pills or something. That part is probably the hardest thing to read about. It also elevates this to a much more serious novel. But I can't even explain how fulfilling and satisfactory it is when it all comes together and comes full circle, and they go from being so estranged and disjointed and having all these problems to kind of finding that common ground together as a family. Actually, no, we follow 4 generations of this family, because we have the grandmother, the mother, our main character, and even her children, and specifically her teenage daughter, who's just kind of coming into her own. And yeah, it was really a treat. It was really good. I enjoyed this book. So yeah, look forward to that review. And that is everything that I read in May. Thank you all so much for watching.